within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers, and of course, members of the Mack Pack. I'm Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. The date is June 29th, 2014, and we have an amazing show in store for you today. Today around 5:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be joined by special guest CJ Grisham of Open Carry, Texas. We'll be taking your listener calls and reading your emails. We'll also be talking about whatever comes our way, so feel free to call in with your own topics. Anything that you'd like to discuss is on the table. If you'd like to join the conversation today, give us a call. The number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. The Mack Pack phone lines are open, and the email to the show is talk@onthemoveshow.com. Don't forget you can check us out at onthemoveshow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow. Don't forget to follow us on here, facebook.com/onthemoveshow. You can like our page. You can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/onthemoveshow. Wow, this has been a extremely busy week, I have to say, and how much I have missed you guys, the Mack Pack out there. I've missed you guys so much. As many of you know, last year I was unlawfully arrested while I was legally open carrying in Vancouver, Washington. I wasn't out there, threatening anyone or anything like that. No laws were actually broken, and I was arrested. I was originally arrested for trespassing, and I just want to point out the fact that I was standing on a public sidewalk. I have video of this, and which, by the way, we'll be releasing the video on our YouTube channel very soon. So make sure you stay updated on that. If you can subscribe to us for more updates. But anyway, after I was arrested for trespassing on a public sidewalk that I pay tax money for. You pay tax money for public sidewalks. It belongs to the people, so you can't possibly trespass on a public sidewalk. But I digress. I have been dealing with this, and after my arrest, they tacked on an additional charge. They tacked on displaying a weapon. They added that to my charges. We'll cover a lot about what happened in great detail a little later. But I just want to let you guys know we've been in and out of court over the last year. Most of this was actually the pre-trial. I've been fighting the city of Vancouver for a year, and I want to let you guys know today is actually the 1-year anniversary of my unlawful arrest, and I find it kind of fitting that we get to do this show on the 1-year anniversary, especially considering the results of my trial on Friday. And we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to bring everyone up to speed on what has actually happened. I haven't been talking about the trial up to this point. But today, I'm going to tell everything. So we'll get to that more a little bit later in the show, and I can promise you that you do not want to miss this episode, guys. So make sure you stay tuned. Anyway, at this point, we are going to move into the first segment of our show, and we like to call it This Day in History.
This Day in History.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Yesterday, what country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev teared down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down.
A date which will live in infamy.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
According to Yahoo News, on June 29th in 1767, which is 247 years ago, today, Britain approved the Townshend Revenue Act, which imposed import duties on glass, paint, oil, lead, paper, and tea shipped to the American colonies. As you all may know, the colonists bitterly protested, prompting Parliament to repeal the duties except for tea. And this actually led us to the Boston Tea Party. So it's a pretty important date. This is everything leading up to the revolution. Anyway, moving on. In 1880, which is 134 years ago, France annexed Tahiti, which became the French colony, on December 30th, 1880. In 1913, 101 years ago today, the Second Balkan War broke out as Bulgaria attacked Serbia and Greece, its former allies in the First Balkan War. In 1927, 87 years ago today, the first trans-Pacific airplane flight was completed as Lieutenant Lester J. Maitland and Lieutenant Albert F. Hegenberger arrived at Wheeler Field in Hawaii aboard the plane Bird of Paradise after flying 2,400 miles from Oakland, California in 25 hours and 50 minutes. In 1954, 60 years ago today, the Atomic Energy Commission voted against reinstating Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer his access to classified information. And in case you didn't know, Oppenheimer was the director of the Manhattan Project. The United States used this project when they were attempting to create their first atomic bomb. Oppenheimer is quoted as saying, "The atomic bomb made the prospect of future war unendurable. It has led us up to those last few steps up the mountain pass and beyond. There is a different country." In 1967, which is 47 years ago today, Jerusalem was reunified as Israel removed barricades separating the old city from the Israeli sector. In 1972, 42 years ago today, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a trio of death sentences, saying that the way that it had been imposed constituted cruel and unusual punishment. The ruling prompted states to effectively impose a moratorium on executions until their capital punishment laws could be revised. In 1988, 26 years ago today, the U.S. Supreme Court in Morrison v. Olson upheld the independent counsel law in a 7-1 decision. The sole dissenter was Justice Scalia. And everybody, I would just like to point out that Justice Scalia is actually still serving on the Supreme Court today, 26 years later. And I'm sure we can all get into that conversation about, serving for life and how they're never voted on that to begin with. They're put there by presidential appointment. I find this is an interesting topic, and I know it's a topic that a lot of you care about. So feel free to give us a call on that today. We're moving on. If you have anything that you would like to talk about today, feel free to join the conversation. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to our first commercial break, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So at this point, we're going to enter into our next segment of the show, and we like to call it the Weekly Defender.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is a segment of the show where we report about armed citizens in the news who have used their firearms to defend their family, their property, and or themselves. Our first Weekly Defender we found on KCCI News in Des Moines, Iowa. 22-year-old Jessica McDonald, an employee of Discount Textbooks in Fort Dodge, Iowa, had just opened up the store when a man entered and demanded that she hand over the cash in the register. McDonald responded by showing the robber that the register was empty. And at that point, the man threatened her with mace, pepper spray. And following that threat, McDonald retrieved the handgun from under the counter, and she pointed it at the criminal, causing him to flee. Store manager Paul Tiggs told a local media outlet that the pistol was kept under the counter for employees to use. In an interview after the incident, McDonald told the media outlet, "It was shocking to me when I first started working here that there was a gun under the counter, and I always thought it was over the top and we didn't need it. But I'm very glad that we have it." And this was on the 23rd of May, 2014. Like I said, that was in Des Moines, Iowa. So our next weekly defender we found on MLive in Michigan. Mark Abe Blim arrived at his home in Gibson Township, Michigan. He found one of his screen windows broken into and an ATV outside his home. In response, Blim retrieved a shotgun, positioned himself on the ATV, and yelled to the criminal inside the house. After Blim fired a shot into the air, the intruder eventually left the house. Police captured the intruder outside Blim's home shortly thereafter, and that was on the 5th of June on 2014. So anyway, it sounds like to me that this guy actually, he took President Obama's advice, right? He fired a warning shot into the air. And many of you actually may know there's actually a man here in Vancouver, Washington that actually is on trial right now for firing a shotgun within city limits. And he says that he was just following the vice president's advice. The advice that he gave where you just fire your shotgun twice into the air and that'll scare whoever's messing with you away. Oh, even though that's in a lot of places against the law. And he was also referring to a double-barrel shotgun. So now you have a shotgun that has no ammo in it to defend yourself. So, anyway, everybody may have already heard that, but it's pretty ridiculous, the advice that the vice president gave. And but this man in Vancouver, he's actually fighting these charges right now. And you know what? I may actually try to see if I can get him on one of these shows in the future. It'd be interesting to talk to him. Anyway, you have a right to defend your life. You have a right to defend your family. And most importantly, you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. And if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, so I have a quick story that I just would like to discuss, and I find it really upsetting. In New Jersey, there was a dad right now who is basically, his son is being threatened to be taken away. And I figured we'd cover this real fast before CJ Grisham comes on. And, I just would like to hear your guys' thoughts on it. But I think it's important that we talk about this. The father, his son, was basically twirling a pencil. And this has ultimately led to the government now trying to take his kid away. This is in New Jersey. I have a clip here. I'll go ahead and play it for you guys. You guys can hear it for yourself.
Ethan Chaplin was the most famous kid in school for a few weeks. A simple pencil twirling incident landed him in hot water with his school. Threats of suspension after a classmate claimed he was spinning it like a gun. But after media attention from Pix 11 and around the world, school officials backed off. Letters to Ethan's father, Michael, showed the school found his son did nothing wrong at all. There would be no disciplinary action, and the superintendent even confident the issue would be behind them all. And that's exactly what happened until Ethan's father received this startling letter. New Jersey's Department of Child Protection and Permanency and Department of Children and Families saying this.
I received a letter from them saying that they had found an incident of abuse or neglect regarding Ethan because I refused to take him for psychological evaluation.
And have you had any history of problems with your son, abuse, anything like that?
Never.
In an effort to play along and clear his name, Michael did take his son in to be evaluated. Ethan was seen by a social worker, had his blood drawn and urine taken. In the end, no behavioral problem ever found. The state, it seems, is ignoring that set of testing now, demanding even more. And this time, if Chaplin doesn't comply, a threat to terminate his parental rights and free Ethan up for adoption.
All I can do is keep fighting. I can keep telling the truth, presenting them with evidence. That is all I can do, and hopefully the state does the right thing.
with that said, we've already had a few guests on the show that have actually been going through similar fights. We've talked about, Suzanne and Andrew Clark, where the government came in and is basically trying to take away their children, and they won. By the way, I'd just like to point out the fact that they won. The government tried to take away their children for simply not wanting to vaccinate their children on every single vaccination that they had. They wanted to selectively choose the ones that they thought were the right ones to do. And by the way, I see that Suzanne and Andrew Clark are actually listening today. I just want to say hello to you guys. And again, I'm still very, very happy that you guys won. And that's really amazing. I would like to have you guys on the show at some point to do a follow-up and see how everything's going. But anyway, with everything that's going on today, there are so many things in the news right now. We're going to try to cover it all. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about what happened in my case. We're also going to have CJ Grisham on in the next few minutes. He's going to talk about what happened with him. I'm sure a lot of you know. I know a lot of you are listening, are probably members of Open Carry Texas, and you're very familiar with what happened with CJ Grisham. But for everybody else, CJ was arrested in Texas for open carrying, and he's been battling this whole thing. And I find his situation simply outrageous. The amount of abuse that the government is doing to citizens nowadays, and just getting away with it. Nothing happens. Nothing is happening to these police officers that are overstepping their bounds, breaking the oaths that they took to uphold and defend the Constitution. I mean, this is serious, and we need to have a real discussion about what is happening in our country. There's other news, obviously. We have corruption in the IRS that's happening. We will get to that today if we have time. We also are going to talk about some of the big things that are happening right now in the Supreme Court. Right now, the Supreme Court has actually just ruled in a unanimous decision that police officers cannot just simply search your cell phone without a warrant. So this is very big news. We will get to that in a few. And right now we're going to cut to another commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk more about everything. So don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So we're just waiting on CJ Grisham to give us a call in here, and once he comes on, we're going to talk with him. I have here a listener that has sent us a message. She says the government needs to get out of the school system and leave the rights of the parents alone. This overreach is horrible. And honestly, I could not agree more. I'm finding more and more people contacting me every day, letting me know some of the things that have happened to them personally, and it's unbelievable. I really hope that I can help people. That's a big part of this show, is to get on the move. Stand up for your rights. You as parents have rights. The government doesn't own your children. As much as they would like you to believe, you own your children. The whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child. That may be accurate in terms of, you need a lot of support, you need family, but ultimately the responsibility ends with you. Everyone needs to take personal responsibility for their own families and not need the government to step in and take away some of that responsibility, stand up and give them money for things. Granted, some people legitimately need help, and I'm not bashing people that are in real need of help and receiving help. But what I am saying is that the government is not your savior. The government, everything that you give the government responsibility of is something that they'll try to continue to expand on. It's really ridiculous to me that people can't see that the fact that the government is expanding. The bureaucracy is expanding. Every single thing that they take is a usurpation of power. The government has no right to tell you tell your family what your kids need to be vaccinated on. They have absolutely no right. That's a personal decision between you and your family. And anything after that point is none of their business. The government has no right to restrict your right to bear arms. The government has no right to come into your home to spy on you. The government has absolutely no right to tell you how to raise your children. And even, I being a conservative libertarian myself here, I believe in the non-aggression principle. If you're not hurting anyone else, then there's really no need for the government to step in and tell you can or can't do anything. So anyway, I have a clip here since we're not getting a call from CJ right now. I'm not sure what's going on. I have a clip here from my interview the day after I was arrested for unlawfully arrested for open carrying. And I'm just going to play it for you guys. On June 29, 2013, and we'll just start at the beginning here. I was arrested, and I was peacefully open carrying my firearm. Okay, I was in Vancouver, Washington. The very next day, I met with Tony Thomas. He's the owner of the YouTube channel Open Carry Vancouver, and I did an interview with him. And here's my interview. I'll go ahead and play it for you guys. My name is Mack Worley. I'm a former Air Force veteran. I served 5 years, 9 months as security forces in the Air Force. I retired medically, disabled vet. While I was in the Air Force, I received several medals. One of them was a Good Conduct Medal. Hey, actually, you know what? I would just like to point out the fact that I received a lot of crap about that line that I just said right there in this video. People said that, it's no big deal that you got a Good Conduct Medal. Why are you saying that? I was using that to illustrate the fact that I haven't gotten in any trouble. I'm actually, in terms of things, I'm pretty much a Boy Scout. I have no criminal record. I didn't get in any trouble during my time in the military, which is why I received a Good Conduct Medal. I'm not bragging that I got a Good Conduct Medal. I just like to point that out. So anyway, here we go. The whole reason why I'm doing this interview here is because I was open carrying yesterday afternoon, approximately 7:45, and I parked my vehicle behind the Walgreens on 164th next to the fireworks display. I walked from there to Burgerville with my AR-15 slung across my body right here, hung right down at my side, where I was not touching it. I had in my right hand, I was recording with my cell phone the video of myself open carrying. And I went down to Burgerville. I picked up a Sprite from there, walked from there back down to the fireworks display. I checked out some prices inside the fireworks, walked out. I was going to leave, but and by the way, this whole time, no one had said anything negative to me. A few people came up to me and asked a few questions about what I was doing, and I just explained, I'm just out here asserting my Second Amendment right, and I was explaining to people that it's not against the law and it's not a crime to open carry a firearm. And I was being lawful in every way, and I was not being threatening in any manner with my firearm. In fact, I didn't touch it except for one time at the beginning of my video to ensure that it was on safe, and it was. So anyway, so I walked down to Big Al's from my car to see what that was, because I didn't know it was a bowling alley. And as I walked over there, I realized, okay, it's a bowling alley. So I'm taking the sidewalk, the public sidewalk now, to come back around to go to my car. And I look in front of me down the street on the sidewalk. I just turned the corner because Big Al's is right here. I was walking this way, this direction from the parking lot, where my car was over this way, and I was going to come take the sidewalk back around and come back to my car. And I look down this road down here, and a police officer is down there, so I think I'm just going to talk to this police officer explain what I'm doing out there. That's going to be it. By the way, this is my first open carry. I've never done this before, and I was excited to get out and assert my rights and just show everybody that it's not against the law and that an armed society is a polite society. So I wanted to basically just walk and explain myself to the police officer. I know he's probably received some phone calls. It was my guess, and I just want to explain my situation. So as I start walking to them, I hear on the loudspeaker to my left, in the parking lot I just came from, a police officer tell me to put my hands up, and I look over and I put my hands up above my head, and I got my camera right here, and they tell me to take off my gun, and I'm telling them I don't want to touch my gun. Have I done anything wrong? Something of that line, and they are all pointing their guns at me. I have about 7 police officers pointing their guns at me. I have several of them with pistols pointing their weapons at me. I have one Officer Hernandez, a female officer. She pointed her shotgun at me. I had the officer that on the street down this way that I was about ready to walk to. He was now in a kneeling position with his AR-15 pointed at me. And at this point, I'm freaked out. So I got my hands above my head with my camera. They tell me to turn my camera off. I tell them no, thank you. And they tell me to remove my weapon. I say I don't want to submit to any searches or seizures of myself or my weapon or my identification. They tell me to take it off again, and they're all pointing their guns and moving in on me. So I'm like, okay, I'm removing it. I take it from the strap up here. I pull it off, knock off my hat in the process, put my gun down in the grass, and then I got my hands up and I'm walking towards the officer in the parking lot over this way where I just came from. The officer then starts questioning who I am, and he asks for my identification. I again say no, thank you. I ask him if I'm being detained. He says no. I ask him if I've broken any laws. He says no. I ask him if I'm suspected of a crime. He says no. And I'm like, well, am I free to go? And he says, no, we need to make sure your gun's not stolen. So they are in the process. While I'm talking to this police officer in the parking lot over here, there's at least 2 or 3 officers over on this side with my gun, and one of them is flicking out all my bullets into the grass in my magazine. I had 30 rounds in my magazine. And then afterwards, I asked them again, am I being detained? And they tell me no. I asked them, am I free to go? And they give me a lecture about what I was doing out there. And at this point, I'm really frustrated, and I tell them, that I'm done talking to them. I don't want to explain myself to them anymore. I asked them if I can just go. One of the officers, Officer Hernandez, the female who was pointing the shotgun at me, she told me to shut up a couple times. I got that on camera. And Officer Rollins, he was the one who I was having the primary contact with. He seemed to be the one calling the shots out there. Anyway, so they finally let me get my gun. I start reloading my magazine again, and they go back to their cars, but they don't leave. They go back to their cars. I'm on the public sidewalk, loading my magazine back up, and I even said in the video, I said I was really shocked that this happened, but earlier in the video I was saying, because I've been out there for at least 30 minutes before the police even showed up, and I was giving kudos to the city of Vancouver and the police department, because either one, the police department knows that it's my right to open carry, and they aren't going to hassle me about it, or two, the people of Vancouver aren't misinformed and think that it's against the law. So I was really excited for that, but then after this happened, I realized I was wrong, and it's just a delayed response. They must have waited until they got everybody there or something. So anyway, so I'm picking up all my bullets. I had to find it all in the grass because it was all kind of tucked in there, and I load my gun back up, just insert my magazine. I didn't put it around in the chamber. I sling it back over my shoulder, put on my hat, and my car's in the parking lot, and I just want to go home at this point. And I start walking into the parking lot from the public sidewalk. I walk into the grass towards the police officer, and they tell me I can't come that way. So I walk back onto the sidewalk, and they say if I don't leave, they're going to arrest me for trespassing on a public sidewalk. So I start walking down towards the police officer this way on the road, and he gets on the loudspeaker and says I can't walk that way either. So now the only way I can go is to go the complete opposite direction of my vehicle. And so I start walking in that direction, and they all start just swarming me, and they yell at me to get on my knees, put my hands above my head. I do the same thing. I put my camera right on top of top of my head here, and they swarm on me. And one officer, I don't know who he was. I can't remember what his name was. But he grabbed my arm, and one of the things that I'm disabled for is I have bad shoulders, and he pulled me down, and my arms up like this, and he yelled at me to stop resisting. I wasn't resisting. He was hurting me, and I said, "You're hurting me," and he said, "I know," and he laughed. And I probably have that on camera too. So anyways, at this point, I look over my shoulder, and Officer Hernandez is on my phone doing something, and then they start standing me up, and I don't see what she's doing anymore. I don't know if she was deleting my recording or not. I don't have my phone at this point. They took it as evidence against me. All right, so we are going to go ahead and pause that right here. We have CJ Grisham on the line. We still have more to talk about on this, and there's still more to that video. I'll play more later, but at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring CJ on the line. Are you there, CJ? Can you hear me?
I am. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I've been following your story for a really long time, and you know, it actually, I think your arrest and my arrest happened somewhere around the same time last year. When were you arrested?
Mine was March of last year.
Okay.
So March 16th.
Okay. Yeah, my arrest was on June 29th, so it was shortly after that, a few months after. Yeah, I mean, you know, after everything happened with me, I started really looking heavily into what's going on with open carry, and you know, I found out about you, and you know, I saw a lot of your interviews and everything. So, you know, in regards to what's happening with you, what is actually the status of your case right now?
Well, we're in appeal right now, but I was eventually found guilty of a bogus charge. They kept shopping around trying to find something that would stick. I wasn't even prosecuted on the charge that I was originally arrested for, which was a resisting arrest, which is kind of odd because there has to be a preliminary charge before you can resist that charge. I went through two very corrupt trials. The first trial ended in mistrial. The second trial I was found guilty. I think what we're finding, and you found this out recently yourself, is that we no longer live in a lawful society. We no longer live in a constitutional society, and we definitely no longer live in a society of liberty and independence. We live in a society in which every level of government, every facet of government, from law enforcement to the court system to our legislators, the entire system is designed to create criminals out of law-abiding citizens. And the reason they want to do that isn't just because we want to throw people in jail, but because it's a money scheme. The state requires criminals in order to keep itself moving. Without, you know, if everybody in the country wasn't, quote-unquote, breaking the law, well, then the income into these cities and these states and the federal government would dry up, and therefore they would be unable to continue this police state that they've created. And I know that sounds sort of, you know, maybe conspiratorial or whatever, but it's so true. I mean, look in your case. You were doing absolutely nothing wrong. You were exercising your rights the same way I was exercising my rights. You were going around peacefully exercising those rights. But because somebody that wore a molded piece of tin on their shirt, and they were wearing the costume of what we call a law enforcement officer, or they used to be called peace officers, but that's no longer the case. Because that person didn't like it, suddenly you and I have to be turned into criminals. And this is happening all across the country. And what's going on is this is all part of an effort eventually to take away our gun rights. In Texas, we've already done it. You know, around the federal law right now is if you're convicted of a felony, regardless of what that felony was or when that felony was, and just for people who are listening, it's a felony to write hot checks in some states. In New York, it's a felony to possess a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. So these are the kinds of felonies that are out there. But if you're a felon, and we've created third-degree and fourth-degree felonies, you can't have a firearm, whether it had to do with guns or not. In Texas, if you are convicted of even a Class B misdemeanor, which is just one level higher than a speeding ticket, you also lose your right to carry a firearm for 5 years. And this is the point. When the government can make everything a felony, then felons can't have guns. And when everything's a felony and everyone's a felon, well, guess who's got the guns? The police and the government. And that's the antithesis of why we're even supposed to have the right to keep and bear arms. Exactly. So, listening to your story and the fact that once you were found guilty, I was found guilty, and they had to change the charges in your case. They had to change the charges in my case. You probably did you get a fine, or was everything adjudicated?
Well, CJ, you actually just dropped the bomb on it. So everybody, just to give you a heads up, and I was going to get to this a little later, but I was actually...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. It's okay. It's live radio, so it's okay. But yeah, I mean, as far as on my case, I was actually found guilty, and it's very similar to what happened with you. And we're going to talk about it in detail after a little bit later in the show, probably the second hour. But I was originally arrested, like the video said. I was arrested for trespassing. That was the charge that was put on me, and that was the only reason that I was actually put in the cuffs and thrown into the back of a cruiser. So the trespassing charge was dropped. They didn't even pursue the trespassing in my trial because I had a video proving that I'm standing on a public sidewalk while I get arrested for trespassing. So they tacked on the displaying a weapon charge, and that's what they pursued in court. So like I said, I'll talk more about that. But yeah, I mean, the ridiculousness of you can get arrested for one thing, and then they can drop it and charge you with something totally different until they find something that they think will stick. We see over and over it in other cases throughout the country in open carry. I know down in Texas, you guys have several people that are in fights against this kind of stuff. What other stuff are you guys doing down there in open carry, Texas?
Well, we're trying to get, obviously, open carry passed here for handguns. We're not allowed to have handguns openly right now. We can carry rifles, and we can carry the old pre-1899 black powder revolvers, but we can't get handguns. So that's the first thing that we're trying to fix, is to make Texas the 45th state to recognize the open carry of handguns. Right now we're one of only 6. And really, Florida is sort of a half and half, but we count them as one of the 6. We're also trying to get, of course, the CHL law fixed. In Texas right now, it costs over $250 to get a concealed handgun license, and that includes the training that's required, the application fee, the fingerprinting, the photographs, all this kind of stuff. And it's $250. And I compare that with, I'm in the Army right now, and my previous duty station before I came home to Texas was Alabama. And in Alabama, I paid $10. They did a background check, and boom, I got my license. That's it. There was nothing to it. And I walked away and had my license mailed to me. And then each year I could apply by mail to get it restated. Here in Texas, $250. And so we're trying to get that fixed as well to make it so it's not such a burden, because people that can't afford to get a CHL can't get a CHL, so then you can't carry. Also, we're trying to get this law fixed, this disorderly conduct clause, because we've had a few people get arrested for disorderly conduct because it's been interpreted to mean if somebody is alarmed. The law actually says if you carry a firearm in a manner calculated to cause alarm, it's called disorderly conduct. And the key word there is calculated. You have to carry that firearm in a manner calculated to cause that alarm. And the courts have ruled in the past that, that what's been proven under that statute is, somebody pointing a gun, somebody brandishing that gun and maybe charging around, anything other than just lawfully carrying it. And so we're trying to get the disorderly conduct clause fixed. And then finally, we're trying to get rid of this idea that if you're convicted of a Class B nonviolent, non-gun-related crime, a Class B or higher, you lose your CHL for 5 years. And in Texas, what that effectively means is you have no right to keep and bear arms. it's funny because we walk around carrying our rifles, and we do that because it's the only thing we can legally carry openly. And everybody complains about that. They complain about the fact that, oh, you guys are walking around, it's in your face, and all sorts of name calling from the so-called gun rights crowd, who really aren't gun rights crowd. I call them butters. They support the Second Amendment, but I call them 50%ers. They only support some of the Second Amendment, the kind that they agree with. So it's like a catch-22. If we can't open carry a handgun, and the only thing we can open carry is a rifle, or if you had a CHL, but now you don't have a CHL because you were convicted of graffiti, and now you lost your CHL, so the only method of self-defense you have is a rifle, but then nobody likes you carrying a rifle. We got a lot of problems here in Texas. And so Open Carry Texas is trying to fix all these kinds of gun laws. We've also, in our Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code, any business that has an alcohol license or a license to sell alcohol either on or off premises, you cannot carry an unlicensed firearm onto that premises. Now, that includes most restaurants. That includes just about every gas station. That includes places like Walmart and Target that sell beer. It includes grocery stores that sell beer. So all these places, it's sort of like a de facto gun-free zone in Texas. If you don't have a CHL, you can't carry into all these places. And if you're a bar that sells, 51% or more of your income is from alcohol sales, even if you got a concealed handgun, you can't carry a gun in there. I don't drink. I shouldn't be barred from taking my gun anywhere because I don't drink. And I understand that people don't want a bunch of armed drunks walking around, with a gun, and they're not able to think straight. But the law should be just like we do with cars. We don't ban cars because people drink and drive. Instead, we just say if you're going to drive, you can't drink. So why not do the same thing with firearms? So there's a lot to fight for here in Texas, and we're at the forefront of doing that.
We don't make it illegal to park in a bar's parking lot, because that would be the equivalent of that. You can't even park around a bar because it's illegal to drink and drive. No, we don't do that because it's illegal to drink and drive. I mean, there's no reason why it can't just be illegal just to have a gun in your possession while you are currently intoxicated. But to not allow it into the facility, it is a de facto gun-free zone. And one thing I would like to ask you your opinion on it. What do you think about the fact that we now have to ask our permission to do something that's a right by getting a permit, a concealed handgun?
That boggles my mind because I think about this way. And today is Sunday, and all across the country, millions and millions of Americans went to church today. And not one of them had to show a license in order to do so. Not one of them had to pass a background check in order to go to church. And if you look out throughout history, religion is one of the leading causes of war in this world. And so why we don't license religion, I'll never know, because it's one of the deadliest. And I'm a Christian, so I'm not trying to cast names here. I'm just trying to make it a point that why do we allow for the licensing and the infringement on our Second Amendment rights, but we don't for any other right? And the Second Amendment is the only one that says shall not be infringed, and it's specific. But yet we've got people who that go to church and ask for a license. You're doing a radio show, which is exercising your First Amendment rights. I don't think you had to get a license to do this. I didn't have to get a license to call into your show. I don't have to get a license to create a Facebook page or to write a letter to the editor or to visit a congressman. I don't need a license to exercise my Third Amendment right to keep the government from quartering its troops in my house. There's not a license to exercise my Fourth Amendment right. It's like in order for you not to be illegally searched and seized, you must get a license first. Otherwise, police have a right to search and seize you. I mean, it's absurd that we allow this for the Second Amendment and we don't allow it for any other of our rights that are out there.
Well, I mean, this is the way that we are going, though. I mean, we've seen the FCC, that this is the Federal Communications Commission. They're talking about, and this is not the first attempt. Let me just point out, they're talking about wanting to put FCC agents in newsrooms across the country. They've already been shot down with this, but this is an attempt to basically censor what goes on in the newsrooms. So, I mean, it basically is a license to free speech. I mean, you have to get a license with the FCC in order to broadcast on terrestrial radio, television, things like that. So if you don't listen to the guy who's telling you not to run that story from the FCC in your office, then this is the guy who's issuing you your permit to use your free speech, use the free press. So, I mean, we're edging closer and closer to the point of where we're going to have permits for everything. I mean, like you said, a permit not to have troops in your house, a permit not to be illegally search and seize. And if you can't afford it, or if you're a felon, you lose the right to that permit. So you don't have the right of free speech anymore. You don't have the right to have any protection against unlawful search and seizure. And also, just kind of to point out here, that whole felon losing their rights kind of thing, that wasn't around until the early 1900s. So, if you were involved in something, even a gun offense, you either didn't get out of prison if they thought that you were going to do it again, or if you did, they gave you your gun rights back. You had everything back. You were a full-blown citizen again.
Yeah. Well, and you know who the reason that these laws are getting through is, I'll go back to the whole butter argument again. Gun owners have been successfully brainwashed, and I personally think the NRA is responsible for a lot of that brainwashing. And that brainwashing is that you should be allowed to carry a gun, but you have to do it concealed. You have to hide it. It can't be shown in public. If you show it in public, then you're all sorts of a bad person. And that's where it starts. It starts with this attitude that there's only one way that you should be allowed to exercise your rights. We scream and we yell about infringements, about licensing, about fees, about gun-free zones, and then those very same people will criticize you and me for openly carrying a lawful AR-15 just because some dumb cracker used that style of a weapon to commit a crime. Can you imagine if every time someone committed a crime with an object, that object got demonized? We wouldn't even be able to carry around rocks anymore. And we've got to get this mentality from the gun owners. You don't have to agree with open carry. If you're a gun owner, you don't have to like what we do. You don't have to respect what we do. But you have to respect our right to do it. And when you've got so-called responsible gun owners, which is a term that I hear more of, and it sickens me to my stomach, talking about how people should just carry concealed. I don't understand why you can't just get a license and carry concealed. This is the NRA brainwashing. This is why I left the NRA. I was a Golden Eagle Life Endowment member, and I'm done. I've had enough of them, because when they came out with that statement saying that those people who open carry, they called it downright weird. They said it's unneighborly. They've never been to one of our walks. They've probably never been to one of your walks. And yet here they are castigating those of us that are exercising our rights peacefully as somehow weird, as somehow something that isn't normal. And then, of course, the gun control crowd, they seize on that. They hear, oh, well, heck, these guys really are extremists, because not only do we hate them carrying their guns, but even the so-called pro-gun crowd doesn't like them carry their guns. And we're our worst enemy. The reason we're losing our rights is because we gun owners are agreeing to the incremental destruction of those rights, whether it be through licensing, whether it be through dictating when people should carry or where they should carry. I mean, the NRA is right now fighting hard for background checks. They are fighting in favor of increased background checks. And while that sounds good to those that are that argue on an emotional level, it makes absolutely no sense, because what's going to happen is who decides? Let's say we get background checks. What does that mean? Who decides what is a discriminating factor for background checks? We already got Obama with his executive order demanding that physicians report mental health issues to the NICS system. So right now, the NICS system will prevent you from getting a firearm if you're a felon. So what tomorrow? Because you've got a mental health disorder. If you've got, I've heard talk about banning weapons from people with depression. Well, who defines what depression is? People who have post-traumatic stress. Well, what kind of post-traumatic stress? Are we just going to make blanket? This is the problem with background checks. Once you've got a background check system in place, the government can decide what the criteria are for preventing you from owning a gun. And that could be everything from a misdemeanor. Right now it's just a felony, but maybe tomorrow it'll be a Class A misdemeanor. Then the next day it'll be a Class B misdemeanor. And then if you get more than 3 tickets, speeding tickets in a year, you can't get a firearm. There are some states like Texas, if you don't pay your child support, you lose your right to get a permit. You can't get a permit. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, those are really excellent points. And, I have to agree with you on it. I mean, it's an incremental usurpation of our rights. And, one thing I would like to touch on is something that you mentioned a little bit ago, and it's talking about how people used to, back in the past, especially you would hear this from the left. You used to hear this from the left all the time. I disagree with you wholeheartedly, but I will defend your right to disagree with me. And now you hear this more from the right. You hear this more from, people like you and me. I disagree with gun control, gun grabbers. But you know what? I have absolutely no problem with having that conversation. I encourage people to have the debate on it because I have found that the more people I talk to, the more they realize that they're wrong. So the more they educate themselves on it, the more they find that they're wrong. But you don't see this anymore. And, the right to bear arms, though somebody, can and has every right to disagree with my right to bear arms, that doesn't change the fact that it's there. They should support the fact that, we all have a right to bear arms, and whether or not they want to exercise their rights, their unalienable rights, which means that they can't even give them away. The government can't take them away. A majority can't vote them away, and you can't even give your rights away. They are innate. So, what are your thoughts on how that kind of conversation has changed over the years?
Well, again, I think that we've all been the entire country just about has just been brainwashed into, Here's what we need to do. Here's my thoughts. Here's how we can really negate this entire argument. We just need to get rid of the emotional aspect of any argument. When we can get rid of emotion and we can just speak on the facts and speak on statistics and reality, then this conversation will shift dramatically, and it'll shift dramatically in our favor. But the problem is we now legislate on emotion, and we now form our opinions based on emotion. Look, and here's a perfect example of this. I'm a staunch Christian. I'm a libertarian, but I'm very conservative. And I know this is going to go off on a tangent, but just for a minute here. I strongly disagree with homosexuality greatly, to an astonishing degree. However, just because I disagree with it doesn't mean that people shouldn't be allowed to marry whomever they love. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't think the government should tell me I can marry a woman just as much as they can't tell me I can marry a man. But it's emotional. This is an emotional-based argument. We need to get rid of, especially in the gun realm, just because people feel a certain way about something. We need to believe in liberty or we don't believe in liberty. And liberty is an ugly thing. True liberty means that there are going to be risks out there. If you take away background checks and you take away licensing and you take away, will bad people get guns? Absolutely, they will. They already get bad guns, or bad guys already get guns. But how did we ever survive 200 years without background checks? It's because we always had a check. I talked to ABC News. One of the things they quoted me on is we were talking about PTSD and background checks and mental health checks, and I told them I disagree with them. And I said, it takes the only way you can stop a mentally ill person with a gun is to have a sane person with a gun. And that's just the way it is. I mean, bad things are going to happen because our Creator gave us free agency to choose right from wrong. And some people use that free agency to commit crimes, and some people use that free agency to save lives. And we've just got to recognize that and stop trying to legislate crime out of our lives.
Absolutely. And the butters that you were talking about, the people that say, I support the Second Amendment, but, I've been referring to these people as sunshine patriots. And, I got that from Thomas Paine's quote in The Crisis. He said, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But if he stands by it now, deserves the love and thanks of man and woman, Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is the dearness only that gives us everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if such a celestial article such as freedom should not be so highly rated. And I definitely agree. I mean, this is one of those conversations that it's important that we all have. But the overreach of the government protects itself. The bureaucracy, the number one goal of any bureaucracy is to protect itself. Protect its amount of money that it's coming in, protect its power, and everything that the government takes, it doesn't give up. Every power that it takes, even if it's supposed to be for a temporary basis, it does not give it up. Just look at the Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act. We're not getting that stuff back unless we fight to get it back from the government. And, actually, I would like to talk a little bit more about PTSD. I know you've discussed this, and I've discussed this in great detail in some other conversations on this show. For me, I find it a little bit disturbing that the government is trying to look at taking away the gun rights of individuals who've been diagnosed or self-diagnosed with PTSD. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think what that is, it's more fear-mongering. The government has, and the liberal left have tried to demonize returning combat veterans because it's no secret that the military force is largely conservative, and their most troops are highly patriotic and believe in the Constitution, but to the liberal progressive mindset, the Constitution is evil and it prevents them from, their statist agenda. And so anything that they can attack troops with, and one of the things they have now is PTSD. And so we've got, the problem is troops commit crimes, and they've always committed crimes throughout the history. I mean, there is no profession out there, even in the faith, where you've got bishops and things. Everybody commits crimes in every single profession. And before there was Iraq and Afghanistan, troops were still committing crimes. Troops were still killing their squad leaders or killing other people. It happens. It happens in every segment of society. But now they're able to attach something to that, and they're able to call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And I think this is just a way to fearmonger, because once you've stigmatized post-traumatic stress in the warrior, you can stigmatize it in everybody. And that includes car crash victims, rape victims, sexual assault victims. Maybe your father got mauled by, a wild animal, and you saw traumatic stress is. Now they've demonized that across the board. And one of the things they're also trying to do is they're trying to demonize depression as a part of that. Because, some people who are depressed, and remember, there's a physiological and a psychological aspect to depression. It's not just, I feel like killing myself. Depression has to do with low testosterone. Depression can have to do with your blood count. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for depression, postpartum depression. And by labeling the small segment of society that takes depression as a reason for taking their lives, now you've just labeled everybody with depression and tried to keep things out of their hands. And, I'm going to say something a little bit extreme here, but if I want to take my life, I want to take my own life, I have the right to do so. My life is mine to live or mine to take. And, to try and legislate away the fact that people want to kill themselves, so let's take away guns, then they're just going to use knives, or they're going to use pills, or they're going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, or they're going to jump off a cliff, or they're going to jump in front of a car. I mean, any number of ways that they're going to try and kill themselves. So a person that's intent on killing themselves is going to kill themselves.
Exactly.
And so,
it's not even just somebody who wants to kill themselves. It's even somebody that wants to harm others. For example, we had somebody in our chat room just say, if someone wants to harm others, they'll use a car, a knife, chemicals, etc. Whatever they can think of. The psychos we've seen in the past occurrence here in the mainstream media, they're far from stupid. They'll find a way to kill people. And, we need to put a balance to that by putting guns back into the hands of everyday citizens. So, I agree with you in that mindset. It's not that we need to take away from these people. Even honestly, if criminals are a danger, in my opinion, if they're a danger, they should have never been let out of jail to begin with.
Exactly.
To go back to our streets to become a danger. If they're mentally unstable and dangerous to society, then we should have never taken down our institutions, our mental institutions that people used to be able to be involuntarily committed if they were in fact a danger to society. And who's responsible for that, by the way? Let's just point out the fact that the left has been systematically dismantling the mental health system.
Right. Well, and we. Here's what I've also noticed is that we have created this stigma around post-traumatic stress, and I've stood up to that. Even in the Army, there's the mentality that you shouldn't go and get help. It's unmanly. It's weak. It's this. It's that. And so I came out back in 2009 and started talking honestly about post-traumatic stress because I wanted people to feel like it's okay to get help. And I've been able to take care of a lot of the criticism because there is a lot of it. But what's happening is that, a lot of people just aren't comfortable because they see what happens to me. I mean, look, after the ABC interview came out and I mentioned that I have PTSD, I mean, Shannon Watts and the gun control extremist crowds are going nuts over the fact that, oh, my gosh, the leader of Open Carry Texas has post-traumatic stress. And so he shouldn't have guns. I mean, I see it on Twitter. I see it on Facebook. I get emails. And so any other person would see that and go, well, hell, I don't want someone coming and taking my guns. I'm not going to go get help. Well, guess what? Now their diagnosis is exacerbated because they're not getting the help and seeking the treatment they should be because they're afraid of losing their rights. And I'll tell you what, whether I have PTS or not, if you're going to come and take my guns, you might want to bring a well-armed team with you because I got plenty to resist with.
And this is something that I find really disturbing. If people in fact actually do care about the troops, which it seems like even in the left people support the troops, or at least they claim to support the troops. If you really want to take care of our soldiers, our airmen, our seamen that are out there serving and protecting us while we sleep, is it really a smart move to demonize people that are seeking help? And is it really creating a situation where our servicemen and women are able to go get that help without being targeted, basically, and losing their rights? On top of that, what's going to happen to the enrollment in the service if our servicemen and women are losing their rights when they join? Are we going to see people not signing up to do this? I mean, it's already it's already hard enough to get people to join the military. We got to offer them benefits in school and all this other stuff. I think this is such a serious issue. And the fact is, just because somebody's going through some stress or they're having a hard time coping with something that they saw or went through, that does not make them a danger to society. What makes somebody a danger to society is intent and actions. That's what makes them dangerous. And to demonize these people, I think, is doing a great disservice to our men and women serving.
Well, and it attacks only one segment of society, but it ignores the rest. I mean, the only reason that I think soldiers are under attack right now is because soldiers have guns and they don't like guns, and so they're really not necessarily focused on the soldier so much as, oh my gosh, that soldier has a gun. And then what they ignore is the fact that police officers, EMTs, these people see just as much death and destruction as soldiers do. And I guarantee you a lot of cops and a lot of EMT professionals, a lot of emergency room doctors and things, they've probably got levels of PTSD as well. Are we going to start taking their guns as well? And then, like I said before, then we've got to worry about rape victims who have post-traumatic stress. And then we've got to worry about robbery victims. And then we've got to worry about sexual assault victims. And then we've got to worry about car crash victims. And this is all just one big incremental effect. If we don't fix, what we need to fix is access to mental health, and we've got to get rid of the stigma. as long as we're talking about getting rid of the stigma, but we're also talking about taking away their guns while we deal with the stigma, then we're really not getting rid of the stigma. And I can say from experience that having post-traumatic stress does not make you violent. Is there a violent aspect to it? I think what happens is there might be some people who are violent who happen to have PTS, but that doesn't mean that just because you have PTS you are violent. And that's just like saying, well, heck, every mass shooter that was out there, he drove a car, so we should ban cars. Or every mass shooter that was out there also wore shoes, so we should start banning shoes. I mean, that's the kind of mentality that we have. And we've got to, again, take emotion out of the argument and look at things on a reality, fact-based way. But we're just going in circles and we're making it worse when we stigmatize people with post-traumatic stress by threatening to take away their guns, and then fewer people go and get help. And then those people that don't get help end up most likely taking their own lives, not somebody else's. Because it's really an internal battle with trying to deal with, for example, in my situation, it's dealing with survivor's guilt. The fact that I made it and some of my friends didn't. The fact that I had to take another life in order to save my own. Those things weigh heavily on my mind. That's a part of my post-traumatic stress. But it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and start killing a bunch more people just because I'm trying to deal with the people I've already had to kill legally as a matter of war. It's just ignorance, and we need to get past this ignorance.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the targeting of victims, I don't think is the answer. You know, we need to target the actual criminals, the actual violent intent and violent actions of people. There are already laws on the books. We don't need to target victims. That's just my opinion. But, hey, CJ, we got to cut to a quick commercial break. Are you okay with sticking with us for a few more minutes? I want to see if we can get some more information to everybody about how they can get involved with Open Carry Texas.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We'll be back in about a minute.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
And we're back. We are into the second hour of the broadcast today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. When we last left, we had CJ Grisham on the phone from Open Carry Texas. We've been talking about gun rights and open carry and all sorts of other issues. If you want to join the conversation today, please give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. We're going to have CJ back on the line in a moment here, but I have a caller here that would like to make some points about gun laws. We have Andrew Clark on the line here. Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm here, Mac.
All right. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for having me on. We've been listening to this since the beginning of the show, and, I want to make a good point is, I think a lot of these gun crimes where you hear these mass shootings and that, it's because the perpetrator knows that no one else is likely to have any kind of defense against them. So they see this as an opportunity to go in there and they feel power. So they go in here and do these horrible crimes and killing people and that because they know no one's going to have the ability to fight and shoot them back. That's why I don't think that citizens should be disarmed. I think we should have concealed carry, open carry. That presents a clear and evident, visible cue that tells this person, hey, you're just not going to come in here and blast 20 people. You might only get one, because someone else is going to catch you before you have a chance to even finish doing what you're trying to do. I really think that that's going to be, that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of these things have happened in gun control areas, from what we've seen. I don't have any stats on it, but it seems that a lot of these things happen where they know that there is not going to be anybody up to stand up against them, kind of like the bully on the school ground, that kind of thing. But
exactly.
That's my feelings on it. I really just feel like if I was in that position in mind, I'm not going to go walk into a theater when I know there's going to be about 5 to 10 other, who knows, firing back at me.
Exactly. And I appreciate you calling in today. One thing that I'd like to point out on that is the fact that a lot of these mass shootings have actually taken place in gun-free zones. They've taken place in places where citizens aren't allowed to carry. I mean, you do not see, and I totally agree with Andrew on this point. Thank you again for calling in, Andrew. You don't see these people, shooting at police stations or going in places where there's armed guards. What are your thoughts on that, CJ?
Well, I completely agree. I think these gun-free zones are victimization zones, and let's not kid ourselves. Gun crimes happen all over the place, people commit crimes with guns all over the place. But the fact is, if you're going to try and take out a whole bunch of people, for example, you don't go to a convention of law enforcement officers to start killing a bunch of people, because you're going to get targeted. The criminal element is cowardly. They want to be able to live to rape again. They want to be able to live to rob again. They want to be able to spend the $23 they get from the cash register, or they want to take out as many people as they possibly can without any resistance, and possibly without even losing their own lives. And that's all that gun-free zones do, is they victimize people, and they create places where people cannot defend themselves. And what we're starting to see around the country, too, is if people are the victims of crime in a place where they have been banned from carrying a firearm, we're seeing these businesses get slapped with lawsuits because it is now incumbent upon them to protect those customers and those consumers, and that they've disarmed. So that's really what it's about. It's about the cowardice of the criminal element and the fact that they want to be able to get away with their crimes. I hear all the time, especially from these butters that I call them, if you open carry, you're just going to be the first one they take out. And I think, well, first of all, number one, first and foremost, that's my decision. If I want to be the guy that they focus on their attention on instead of some innocent bystander that's unarmed, and that gives a concealed carrier the opportunity to take out a firearm while he's shooting at me, then that's my choice. But if that were true, then all the police officers would constantly be getting shot because they openly carry all the time. And the reality is that when you see a firearm, that is a deterrent to crime, because the criminal element knows that you are willing to defend yourself with lethal force. And most criminals don't want to take that chance. Exactly. And let me relate that to my military experience. I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed in F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. My actual job when I first got there, I was a nuclear deterrent. That was my job. We did security, and we responded to alarms in the missile complex when there was any kind of alarms. And, it's me and one other guy that's responding out there. So obviously if there's snipers out there, we're probably not going to be able to kill everybody out there if they're well armed. There will be an armed response, and more people will come, and we have bombers on standby to basically carpet bomb the whole area. But initially, our job is basically just a deterrent. We are there to make it not a soft target, not as easy as just walking in and taking what's there. We actually protect it. Unlike some of these countries that are nuclear powers, they don't even have 24/7, 365-day protection of their nukes. And this same concept applies
to just everyday society. You cannot even quantify how many crimes are prevented just from open carriers having a firearm on them and being able to prevent a crime before it even happens because somebody wanted to go after a soft target. So, I definitely agree with that. I'd like to get a little bit more information from you, CJ. What can people do to help out with your case specifically, and what can people do to help you guys in Open Carry Texas to get the legislation through that you guys are trying to push?
Well, let's start with Open Carry Texas. You can go to opencarrytexas.org. We've got a little membership thing there. You can sign up. We don't have a super smart, sexy machine that's going to send you all these great, pretty emails. We're not funded by Bloomberg, so we are funded by the donations. And what we ask our supporters to do is to be a high-caliber donor. And what we mean by that is, we ask our members, if you're going to donate the caliber of your choice, $2.23, $5.56, $7.62, for the 223, 556. 7.62 for the 30-06 donors. Donate $30.06, and that's how we're funded. But also just to, the best way to help. And I know you're based out of Washington, and you probably have a lot of listeners up there and around the country. The best way to help is to not stand in the way. And what I mean by that is there are all these so-called. I love these emails I get. I'm one of the most staunch defenders of the Second Amendment. I'm a lifelong NRA member. I own this many guns. I was the inventor of the AK-47, whatever. I'm God's gift to gun rights, but I don't think you guys should walk around with rifles. And that right there is one of the biggest deterrents and helps that the gun control crowd can use, because when they can attack anything, and right now open carry is their soup du jour because they realize it's a wedge issue among gun owners and gun rights advocates. So if we can stop attacking those people that exercise their right to openly carry, it takes away the wind out of their sails. They've already won on the whole background check issue because that was a wedge issue, and the NRA was very supportive of background checks, and so there was that big split between those that like it and those that don't. And so, of course, the gun control crowd stepped on that. We just need to stick together. And, you can disagree with the way that people exercise their rights, whether it's open carry of a pistol, open carry of a rifle, it doesn't matter. If they're not hurting anybody, they're not breaking any laws, they're not being imposing and threatening, so what? Let people bother their own business. I love the common law. And the common law states that unless there's a victim, there's no crime. So if there's no victim, there should be no crime. And if we're not hurting anybody, then we shouldn't be stopped. So don't stand in the way is what I would say to those people if they want to help Open Carry Texas, not just financially.
And what's your website information and other like Facebook stuff so people can help get involved that way? We're Open Carry Texas, all spelled out, .org. We're Facebook.com/Open Carry Texas, Twitter.com/Open Carry Texas. We're all over the social media as well. We also, if you're in Texas, we have groups, different groups. You can search. If you go to Open Carry Texas and click on local groups, there's a link to all of our local groups around the state. Find your local state organization. We've partnered with several open carry advocacy groups all around the country and trying to get open carry all over. We're also learning from states that have had open carry for a long time, so we are in contact with them. But opencarrytexas.org, and then find us on all the social media and all that. And as far as my case goes, I'm being represented by the National Association for Legal Gun Defense, and their website is selfdefensefund.com. That's SELF Defense DEFENSE, and then fund FUND, selfdefensefund.com. And what I would recommend, and this is good for you too, Mack, if you own a gun out there and you're going to carry that gun, and it's possible if you're carrying that gun, you may have to use it for self-defense, go to selfdefensefund.com and sign up for this prepaid legal, and they specialize in gun rights. So Mack, if you had been a member, I don't know how much you pay or if you had to pay anything for your legal defense, but they will represent you for free in both your criminal and your civil case if you have a civil case. And it costs about $12.50 a month. And, if you're a gun owner and you're walking around out there
and you don't think you're ever going to have to need your gun, but that one moment that you need your gun, you can be guaranteed that you may or may not be charged with a crime, or you may or may not be sued by the family. And if you don't have an attorney, it's expensive. You know, and I know. It's expensive fighting a false arrest. So for some peace of mind, it's $12.50 a month. And then we have a special promo code. If you use open carry, one word, as a promo code, you get 90 days free. So I can't tell people enough. If I wasn't a member, I mean, I'm over $60,000 in legal fees, but I haven't had to pay any of it.
Wow. That's, yeah. I mean, honestly, I found out about things like this after the fact, and I would have loved to have been in these kind of organizations already, but unfortunately I wasn't. And now I am, rapidly going in the hole with the amount of money I'm spending for legal defense. So yeah, I mean, this kind of thing is crucial. I think everybody should look into it, and I definitely agree that would be very helpful. And I will be getting something like that in the very near future, just for any future incidents or anything at all. So. With that said, CJ, I really appreciate you coming on, and most importantly, I would like to thank you for your service to our country and for what you guys are doing out there in open carry, Texas. It's really important that you guys continue the fight. You have my full support, and if there's anything at all that I can ever do for you guys, please let me know.
Well, and likewise up here, let us know what we can do to help with your issue. So I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about your case.
Yes, sir. All right. Yeah, well, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and I appreciate you coming on again. And after we get back, guys, we're going to talk about my case in detail, and I'm going to lay it all out there for you guys. So don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. Okay, so we're going to talk about everything from the very beginning about what happened on the 29th of June, 2013, when I was unlawfully arrested for peacefully open carrying my firearm in Vancouver, Washington, to now, to the present day. And, as it was already discussed, I was found guilty by a jury of my peers of displaying a weapon. And we'll get to the actual breakdown of this and why I believe that I was found guilty. Just so you know, the jury did not have any way of specifying why I was guilty. They just said you were found guilty. And we're going to get into all of the ins and outs of this. I am adamant that I was not guilty. I am adamant that I did absolutely nothing wrong and I fell within the bounds of the law. And anyway, we have the interview from my time on Open Carry Vancouver, and I'm going to finish up this interview for you guys so you can hear the rest of the story. And here it goes. They took it as evidence against me. Anyway, Officer Hernandez, a female, then proceeded to search me while there are at least 4 to 5 other male officers around. She searched me and she grabbed my groin. I told her she did not have permission to do that and that she was sexually assaulting me. And that, if the cameras are on the dashes of the police officers' vehicles, I had the one vehicle pointed directly at me over here and another vehicle pointed directly at me over here. I want to subpoena those dash cams so I can... Which, by the way, I would just like to point out that the dash cams were unavailable to be used. So we never got that footage. See and have another view if they took my camera. Regardless, my camera wasn't pointed at me at that point. They'd already taken it. I was immediately arrested, I was thrown in the back of a police officer car. Hernandez was very rude to me several times during this time. I was initially in her car, and then they moved me to Officer Rowland's car. All right, the next of the interview, it's part 2. So here, I'll go ahead and play part 2 for you guys. When I was in the police officer's vehicle, Sergeant Rowlands, or Officer Rowlands, he read me my rights. I reserved my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and he said, do you understand? I reserved my Fifth Amendment right again. He said I need a yes or no question or answer, and I didn't answer. He then said, you need to answer now. I didn't answer again. He said, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you don't understand your rights as I've read them to you, and at that point, he closed the door. But later, I was never reread my rights, and I was also asked several questions about what I was doing out there. Officer Rowlands, as he's driving me to the police station, he's basically insulting me, and I'm asking him, well, first of all, I'm surprised that they're handcuffed me. I couldn't believe that I was being arrested, and I tell them, how do you sleep at night? You took an oath to defend the Constitution, and it literally means nothing to you, apparently, because you are arresting me for doing nothing. You're fabricating all these crimes that I supposedly commit. They said I was being charged with displaying a weapon and unlawful trespass, second degree. And I don't know how I could have been trespassing, because I was on a public sidewalk when I was arrested, and I was not even touching my firearm until they told me to. I didn't want to touch my firearm. They directed me to touch my firearm while they were pointing guns at me. So, anyway, I'm back I'm into the police cruiser. Officer Rowlands, he's driving me back to the police station, and he's on a cell phone talking while he's driving me. I'm pretty sure that's against the law in the state of Washington. Am I right? I think that is. And I'll just point out the fact that I found out after the fact that police actually have special privileges. They are special citizens, and they can, in fact, talk on their cell phone while driving. And then right after that, they can give you a ticket for doing the very same thing. So anyway, moving on. I asked him very politely if he could get off of his cell phone while he's driving me, because more people die in car accidents every year than from gun violence. So he ignores me, and he's rude to me the whole way there, and I'm observing my right of my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and on questions that could possibly be used against me. I don't know what his MO is on asking the questions, so I just don't answer any of his questions. So he's getting very angry, and he says, "Oh, you're going to play that game." I get into the police station. They start processing me. I tell them that I'm not going to answer any questions or cooperate. I'm not going to physically resist in any way, but I'm not going to cooperate with my abduction. And they tell me that if I don't submit to a breathalyzer test, even though they admitted that I didn't look drunk or intoxicated in any way, that they were going to put me in the drunk tank. Well, I told them they had to do what they had to do. If that was what they felt they needed to do, I'm not submitting to anything, and I'm not going to answer any of their questions. Also, at one point, I was actually denied water while I was in the lockup there in the drunk tank. I asked for water. And they didn't give me any water the whole time I was in, from 10:20 to 3:49 a.m. I told them that I'm an asthmatic, which is the reason why I got medically separated from the Air Force. And I told them I require 2 puffs twice a day of my steroid inhaler. They need to contact my wife to get it. I didn't get it the whole time I was in lockup there, and during that time is when I needed it. So I was denied my medicine. So they denied me my phone call. I did not get a phone call at all. I was denied to see an attorney, even though I demanded one, and I demanded one. And I said, do not ask me any more questions until I talk to an attorney. And they continued to ask me questions. After which time, the last time I could see on a computer screen, it was 10:20. I believe I was in the back of a police car at 10:20 p.m. last night. And at that time, that was the last time I could see a clock. When I was bailed out by my wife, who she just knew that I was open carrying and that I probably got arrested somehow. So she called the police station. I was in jail worried because I couldn't call her. I had no idea what she was thinking, if she thought I was hurt or what. So she called the police station, and she found out that I was arrested, and she bailed me out. And I got out of jail at 3:49 a.m. last night. Okay, so that's the story. That is my interview with Open Carry Vancouver, and let's talk about where we actually stand right now. You know, what has happened. You know, I've been fighting this for 1 year today. Like I said, this is my 1 year anniversary. So why is it taking so long? Why is it been drug out as long as it has? The reason why is because the prosecution was playing hide the ball with my video. As I said, I recorded the whole thing, and I mean the whole thing. This is from the moment that I stepped outside of my car, and it's almost like 40 minutes of video of me walking peacefully, and then the police showing up and pointing their guns at me. They would not give us this video. This is the reason why this trial has lasted so long. I was in pretrial forever. I mean, 9 months, 10 months, something like that. And it was because, as part of discovery, they're required to give all evidence, which includes the video that they took. They took from me to be used as evidence against me. And they kept coming up with excuse after excuse as to why they couldn't provide the video that they're required to do by law. And one thing I would just like to point out, they first said that they didn't have the technology to get the video off the phone. They couldn't access the phone. Then after that they said, and by the way, each time that they say a reason why they can't do it, they're letting us, it's basically waiting until the next trial. So there's about a month to 2 months in between each excuse. So the first time they said they didn't have the technology. The second time they said that they're sending a warrant to Google for the password, and they got to wait. And then I tell them that hearing that Google isn't going to have the password. It's a swipe password. So it's one of those pattern passwords on the cell phone, and they didn't listen. So after that failed, the next hearing, I agreed that I would unlock the phone for them at the police station. And after I saw the video that it was still there, that they didn't get rid of it, and basically what happened, they changed the deal. They suddenly call me up and they say, hey, just give us the password over the phone. You're not allowed to touch the phone, so just give us a password. And I refused it. I said that they went back on their end of the deal, and they're the ones that changed the deal. But when we went to court, they said that I was the one that changed the deal. So again, keep in mind that every time this is going on, there's about a month to 2 months in between the appearances. So the next appearance in court, the judge ordered them to allow me to unlock the phone, and even allowed me to have an evidence custodian on my behalf to get a copy of the video before allowing them to have it. Okay? So the day I was supposed to head down to the police station, I got a call from my lawyer saying that they were canceling the appointment because they already had the video. They had the video already. So what changed? What happened to allow them to gain access to the phone? They didn't have access before. Well, when we finally were given a copy of the video as part of discovery, we discovered something outrageous. After looking at the video's timestamp, they had the video since June 30th, 2013 at 3:48 in the morning, approximately 1 minute before I was released from jail. So I was arrested June 29, 2013, around 8 p.m. I was in the back of a cruiser around 10:20 p.m. And they had my video approximately 8 hours after my arrest. They lied not only to me, they lied to my lawyer, they lied to the judge and the court. The prosecutor has drug out this case in an attempt to keep me from getting the video, hoping that I'd get in trouble for something else, or maybe I'd accept some deal, which, by the way, they offered me several deals, which I refused to accept. And, not to mention, I would just like to point out the fact that they pulled my video off of my phone without a warrant. They had no right to get that video. It was 3:48 in the morning. What judge is going to issue a warrant at 3:48 in the morning? And we found out that they didn't have a warrant. None of this could be used in this trial because we needed that video. We're not trying to get that video taken away. That video is part of our evidence that we need to use to prove that these police officers violated my rights. However, the court has narrowed. During this trial, everything got narrowed down. So let me explain. At first, they dismissed the charge of trespassing. This is something that happened just a little bit ago, right before we actually began the actual trial. They dismissed the trespassing charge. That was the reason why I was arrested in the first place. That's why they slapped cuffs on me. That's why they threw me in the back of a cruiser. And then later they added, oh, you were also displaying a weapon. So even though, Washington is an open carry state and case law has actually, proven now that Washington, it's lawful for you to carry a weapon in Washington. And the law that I was charged with displaying a weapon, it's been narrowed through court. So, and we'll get to that in a little bit more. Throughout this case, it was narrowed even further. And the case was narrowed to the point of everything prior to the police arriving. So in that, the jury saw and heard nothing about after the police arrived. They didn't even hear or see anything about the police arriving. So the video was stopped right before the police interaction, and they saw me walking around the city of Vancouver with the AR-15. And I'm having polite interactions with several people, explaining what I'm doing out there. I go to Burgerville. I order a Sprite. I ask them what their gun policy was. They tell me they don't know. I politely have a little exchange with the woman there, and I walk out. And again, I'm having polite interactions throughout that. No one is looking alarmed. No one's running away screaming. No one's even arguing with me or disagreeing with me in any way. I do not see any alarm in anyone. And the video shows that. The video of me walking around that the jury even saw shows that. The prosecution, this made it so that the prosecution could not use witnesses that were testifying to the alarm after the police's arrival. So, they couldn't say, hey, I saw this guy and I was alarmed, after all the police came, pointed their guns. We argued the fact that the 6 to 8 police officers that responded pulling their guns out at me from the very beginning, that is actually what created the alarm of the situation. And, it kind of was a give and take for us. We couldn't use the fact that the police actually released me during the first encounter. They pulled me away into the parking lot. They unlawfully searched my gun after I said I did not consent to it, and then they let me go. They let me go. So why did they arrest me, and why did I get charged with displaying a weapon if they let me go the first time? I was doing everything upon the second interaction that I was doing on the first interaction. And on the second interaction, when they had already let me go, all I wanted to do was go home. That's all I wanted to do. They prevented me from going home. So let's talk about the actual trial. I was under the impression that everything was going great in trial, and we had a series of major victories for our case in trial, and one of those victories was the jury instructions. Jury instructions are very crucial to the actual way that the jury decides if you were guilty or innocent. And jury instruction number 8 of my case here, it says, the mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle in public is not illegal. Wait a second. That's exactly what I'm being charged for. The mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle. All of the witnesses that testified against me, they said that I was conducting myself in no way threatening. I wasn't pointing the weapon at anyone. I wasn't touching my weapon. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was not aggressive. Even the prosecutor admitted these facts, and they admitted that I was not out there to intimidate, but to educate people on gun rights. All of these facts were conceded by the prosecution. So with the fact that the mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle in public is not illegal, how could I have been arrested? How could I have been found guilty? Let's look at jury instruction number 9. It specifies here, warrants alarm for the safety of others applies only to conduct that poses a threat to others. Conduct. That's a very important word. So we'll come back to that in one moment. The actual instruction, the RCW 9.41.270 that I was charged with, it's titled Weapons Apparently Capable of Producing Bodily Harm and Unlawful Carrying or Handling of those weapons. it says that someone who's carrying, exhibiting, displaying, or drawing a firearm, dagger, sword, knife, or other cutting or stabbing instrument, club, or any other weapon apparently capable of producing bodily harm in a manner, under circumstances, and in a time and place that either manifests an intent to intimidate another or that warrants the alarm for the safety of other persons. So this is what the prosecutor had to prove. They had to prove that I was carrying a weapon capable of producing bodily harm in a manner, under circumstances, and in a time and place. That "and" is very, very important. They had to prove all of those things. So manner, that refers to mannerisms, conduct, things that I was specifically doing. So let's get back to jury instruction number 9 here. Warrants alarm for the safety of others applies only to conduct that poses a threat to others. All of the witnesses, all of them, said that I was doing nothing. I had no conduct that was threatening. The only thing that they were threatened about was the fact that I had a gun. And if we refer to jury instruction number 8, again, it says that the mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle in public is not illegal. So, conduct. A gun cannot conduct itself. Am I right? An inanimate object can't conduct itself. So, warrants alarm only applies to conduct that poses a threat, which would mean me. Things that I did. All witness testimony proved that I did nothing that was alarming. I specifically was not threatening anyone. They were threatened only by an inanimate object that has no ability to conduct itself. Jury instruction number 10. A reasonable person standard is incorporated into the phrase warrants alarm. What does that mean? It means that a reasonable person, meaning a person that is aware of the law, is what is actually applies to the phrase warrants alarm. So a reasonable person who is aware of the law would know that the mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle in public is not illegal, so they would not be alarmed at the presence of an inanimate object. Again, carrying, exhibiting, displaying, or drawing any firearm, dagger, sword, knife, or cutting instrument, cutting or stabbing instrument, club, or any other weapon apparently capable of producing bodily harm in a manner, again, mannerisms, conduct, under circumstances, and in a time and place that either manifests an intent to intimidate another or warrants alarm for the safety of others. They have to prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. RCW 9.41.27. This is what I'm prosecuted on. This is what I have been charged and found guilty of. Like I said, all witnesses testified that I was not conducting myself in a threatening manner. They were only threatened by the mere presence of the rifle, and the prosecution admitted to the fact that they did not think that I was out to intimidate anyone. They conceded the fact that I was only out to educate on the public on gun rights. And the prosecution asked me while I was on stand if I felt threatened when I left the house. I replied no. The prosecution then went on to ask why I had a loaded weapon if I was only out to educate people on gun rights. And this is their words. I never said that I was only out to educate on gun rights. I was out there for several reasons. First of all, to assert my own rights. You know. Second of all, and let me just say that was my answer. I answered that I was out there also to assert my constitutional rights, my human rights. The second reason, obviously, was to educate people, both through talking to people while I was out there, and also to make a how-to YouTube, how to open carry lawfully and legally in the state of Washington. And I did my research before I went out. I knew this was an open carry state. Everything I did was in the bounds of the law. And also, other reasons why I was out there was obviously, I'm out there to normalize firearm carry. The more people see everyday people carrying firearms, the more they're okay with it. That you may see somebody carrying a firearm for the first time and be shocked. You may be alarmed, even if it's totally legal. The reasonable standard with it, though, is that you should know that there's a it's okay. It's not against the law to do it. So you shouldn't be alarmed, but you can be alarmed. But it doesn't matter. The point is, if that person's alarmed the first time they see it, they may be less alarmed the next time and the time after that. Eventually, it's going to come to a point where they are not alarmed at all. They're not unreasonably alarmed at all. Any alarm that you get from somebody that's not touching their firearm, being very polite, and you're alarmed only at the mere presence of an inanimate object, that is unreasonable alarm. That's an unreasonable person. Even if that person didn't know the law, they're required to know the law according to the standard. So, when I was asked, I said why I had a loaded weapon. If I was only seeking to educate people on gun rights, I answered I was also asserting my rights. But let me just point out a little analogy here to you all. Do you all always carry a cell phone battery in your phone? Do you always expect to get a phone call? If you do, are you expecting a phone call every second of the day that you have a battery in your phone? Of course, the answer is no. Nobody's that busy. Nobody's expecting a phone call every second of the day. But why? Why aren't you? Why do you still carry a battery in your phone if you're not expecting a phone call? Well, the reason is you don't know. You don't know if you're going to get a phone call. You don't know if you're going to get a text. You don't want to have that object, that instrument, that tool be useless to you if the time comes when you need it. So why did I have a magazine in my weapon? Obviously to assert my rights. Also because it's not illegal. There's no law that says I can't. So, but more importantly, in terms of self-defense, how would I know if there's a threat? I have no idea. Not just as much as you don't have any idea that you will be getting a phone call. So anyway, things went further from there. The jury went into deliberation. They started talking about the case, and then they had a question. And I think this ultimately led to my guilty verdict that I received. We'll be right back with the question and the rest of what happened in court after this. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. All right, so when we last left, we were talking about what happened in my trial. The last thing I told you, the jury was in for deliberation, and they had a question. And I think that this question is ultimately what led to me being found guilty of displaying a weapon in the state of Washington. Just so you know, if you have any questions about what happened, give us a call. We got about 11 minutes left in the show. 619-924-0986. Again, 619-924-0986. I'm an open book. I am telling all, so feel free to ask your question. The jury's question, we all came back in to find out what it was, and their question was, is there any difference in the law or any differentiation, I can't say that word right now, but is there any difference in the law that basically says there's a difference between a loaded and unloaded firearm? And the answer to that question is no. There is absolutely no difference between a loaded, unloaded firearm in the law. And in fact, the law, as I said, it's carrying, exhibiting, displaying, or drawing any firearm, etc., etc. It doesn't say anything about a loaded firearm. It doesn't say anything about that. So anyway, we answer that question. The judge says, well, you know, the question has basically been answered in the jury instruction, so we'll just refer them back to their jury instructions. And again, jury instruction number 8. The mere open carrying of a semi-automatic rifle in public is not illegal. Number 9, warrants alarm for the safety of others applies only to conduct that poses a threat to others. A reasonable person standard is incorporated into the phrase warrants alarm. So this, with all of the stuff in the law, there's no difference. 10 minutes later, we're called back into the courtroom. The jury has reached a verdict. The judge gets up there and he says that I am found guilty. I'm found guilty of carrying, exhibiting, displaying, or drawing a firearm in a manner, under circumstances, and in a time and place that either manifests an intent to intimidate another or that warrants alarm for the safety of other persons, even though everything I've just told you, this was a travesty. This was a failure of our justice system, and I want to let you all know that this is not over. Just because I was found guilty does not mean that I was guilty. I appreciate everyone's support that has helped me through this and told me that they stand behind me. And I want to let you guys know that I'm dug in. I am currently in my foxhole, dug in, and I'm appealing. I will appeal this case as high as I have to. I will never back down. The jury has made a tragic mistake, and I'm not going to stop until we fix it. So your words of encouragement, obviously I appreciate that. And, if you guys would like to, follow us on everything, all of our social media and things like that, you can stay updated with what's going on. Anything that you do like that, obviously, I absolutely appreciate it, and thank you so much for doing that. Another way that you can get involved, too, I know times are tough and money is scarce and, our dollar value is dwindling, but we also have a donation page. If you want to get involved through that, feel free to go to onthemoveshow.com/donate.html. Again, that's onthemoveshow.com/donate.html. We have a pile of legal fees stacking up, and, we're going to need some money. So, I understand, if you can't give, believe me, I understand. Money is tight with me too. And I hate the fact that I even have to ask for money. But if you're willing to give and you want to support, I really do appreciate it. I will not back down. I will continue to fight this fight. And I sure do appreciate your all support. So, anyway, we're moving on. I sure do appreciate you all, for sticking with us and listening to the show today. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we get back, we're going to enter into the listener challenge, and I may have time to talk about a few issues in the Mack attack. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
I challenge you to a duel. Did you hear that? Sounds like it's time for a challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge.
All right, this is the segment of the show where I issue you all a challenge. Your mission, if you choose to accept it today, is to let the Vancouver Police Department know how you feel about their treatment of law-abiding citizens, people who are open carrying within the city. So you can do this in a few different ways. You can give them a call at 360-478-7400. Again, that is 360-487-7400. You can also email them at vanpd@cityofvancouver.us. Again, that is VANPD@cityofvancouver.us. You can also mail them, courtesy of the Vancouver Police Department, P.O. Box 1995, Vancouver, Washington, 98668. You can also feel free to go to their Facebook page and give them a review. Let them know what you think. Review them. And I would just like to point out, there is no need to be aggressive with these people. But you are well within your rights to let them know how you feel about the treatment of law-abiding citizens. This, for me, is step one in a greater attempt to change the way that they interact with open carriers. And I really do hope that you will all help me in persuading them to uphold the Constitution that they swore an oath to defend, to uphold and defend. And that is this week's challenge. I encourage you all to do it. Stand up, speak out, get on the move. And with that said, we got a few moments left in the show. You can join the conversation by giving us a call at 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com and give us your take on everything. And we'd be happy to hear what you have to say. So with that said, I want to quickly get to the last point. The Supreme Court, they have actually recently come down with a ruling. And in my opinion, I think it breathed life back into the Fourth Amendment. It's really awesome to me. So we're going to enter into our next segment, the Mack Attack.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
All right, this is the segment of the show where I report about outrageous events in the news. So it's not outrageous that they struck down this procedure that the police departments were doing. But the Supreme Court ruled that it violates the Constitution for the police to search cell phones without a warrant. This is something that's been going on for a long time, and this is what is outrageous. According to an article written by Stephen Denon of the Washington Times, the Supreme Court ruled Wednesday that police must obtain warrants before snooping through people's cell phones, delivering a unanimous decision that begins to update legal understanding of privacy rules to accommodate the 21st century technology. Police agencies argued that searching through data on cell phones was no different than from asking someone to turn out his pockets, but the justices rejected that, saying a cell phone holds the most personal and intimate details of someone's life and falls squarely within the Fourth Amendment's privacy protections. It's hard to imagine these bitterly divided justices agreeing on anything, but, they all could see that this was a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. They went on to say that the right of the Fourth Amendment, first of all, is the right of the people to keep and bear arms, I messed that up. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So I would just like to point out that the Obama administration supports this kind of illegal searches of cell phones without warrants. And no, I am not talking about the NSA. I'm actually talking about the police taking away your phone during a stop and searching it without a warrant. And, of course, police departments around the country are in favor of them having this power, of course. You're on the wrong side of history and the Constitution, I might add, when this heavily divided Supreme Court rules 9-0 against you. I mean, it's unbelievable. When the Supreme Court rules on something, I'd like to point out the fact that when they rule something as unconstitutional, it doesn't make it illegal from that point on. It means it was illegal to begin with. It means that every time they've done this, they violated the Constitution. And I find it insulting that they compared searching your without to asking you to turn out your pockets. And so does Justice John G. Roberts, Jr. He wrote in the unanimous decision, the fact that technology now allows an individual to carry such information in his hand does not make it the information any less worthy of protection for which the founders fought. Our answer to the question of what police must do before searching a cell phone seized incident to an arrest is accordingly simple. Get a warrant. I can't agree more with that. Anyway, that is today's show. I really want to thank CJ Grisham for coming on the show, and I want to thank you all, our listeners, members of the Mack Pack, for tuning in week after week. I really appreciate your continued support. You can get more information about our show by checking us out at OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.